The first thing that shattered the night was not a scream. It was the sound of helicopter blades chewing the air above Riverside General, rattling ICU windows like they were about to burst. Security froze. Nurses looked up. Someone whispered the word terrorist, and for a half-second, the hospital forgot how to breathe. Emily Carter did not look up. She stood at the nurse's station, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on a flickering monitor, the hum of fluorescent lights drilling into her skull. It was 11:45 at night, the hour when hospitals felt hollow, the hour when mistakes killed quietly. Her hands moved with practiced calm, signing off vitals, correcting a chart, catching an error no one else had noticed. 14 years on night shift taught you where death liked to hide. "You're still here," Dr. Nathan Brooks muttered, leaning against the counter, rubbing his temples. His voice was low, tired, edged with something close to fear. "They cut supplies again, eyes. Central says we're supposed to reuse pulse oximeters if they look clean." Emily's jaw tightened. She didn't answer right away. She listened. To the monitors, to the distant cough from triage, to the building settling around them. "That's how people die," she said finally. Flat. Certain. Before Brooks could respond, the automatic doors slammed open. Boots hit linoleum hard. Fast. A gurney came flying in, blood dripping onto the floor in thick, uneven drops. A man with no name, no wallet, no voice. Just a chest that barely moved. Emily was already running. She didn't know it yet, but this was the moment the hospital would try to break her. Emily reached the trauma bay before the paramedics finished shouting. She grabbed the rail, eyes sweeping the body in one sharp pass. Gunshot wounds, multiple. Tight grouping. Not random. The man's skin was already turning grey, breath hitching like it might forget what to do next. "Pressure's gone," a medic barked. 60/40 and falling. Emily cut him off with a raised hand. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "Trauma 1. Now." She moved the gurney herself, steering with her hip, calling for blood, suction, rapid infuser. Her words snapping into place like commands that expected obedience. Dr. Brooks appeared at her shoulder, already gloved, eyes wide. "Collapsed lung," he said. "We need to decompress." Emily nodded. She was already opening the tray. The doors slid open behind them with a soft, bureaucratic hiss that didn't belong in a room like this. Mark Hollins stepped inside without breaking stride, suit perfect, tablet tucked to his chest like armor. He didn't look at the blood. He looked at the clock. "Stop," he said. Not loud, not urgent, just practiced. The room slowed. Brooks froze with the scalpel hovering. Emily turned. Really turned. Her eyes met Hollins's, and something hardened there. "He's dying," she said. Hollins glanced at the tablet. "Uninsured. Indigent. We're on diversion. Patch him and prepare transfer." The monitor screamed. The man's hand twitched. Emily stepped between Hollins and the bed. Her breath was steady. "He won't survive the flight." Hollins smiled thinly. "That's a risk we're not paying for." The man on the table groaned, a raw, animal sound, fingers clamping around Emily's wrist with shocking strength. His eyes were open now. Grey. Focused. Not pleading. Commanding. The monitor dipped again, the tone stretching thin and ugly. "We're losing him!" someone shouted. Brooks swallowed hard, eyes flicking to Hollins, then to Emily. "If I cut," he whispered, "I lose everything." Hollins leaned closer, voice slick with certainty. "Step away, Nurse Carter. This is not your call." Emily looked down at the man, gripping her hand, felt the heat of his blood through her glove, felt the clock pounding in her chest. She exhaled once. Long. Controlled. "Code blue," a nurse yelled as the line flattened. No rhythm. No time. Emily moved. She snatched the scalpel from Brooks's hand and drove the trocar between ribs with brutal precision. Air hissed out, loud and violent. The chest rose. The monitor stuttered, then found a beat. 1, 2. A rhythm clawed its way back. Emily worked fast, packing, sealing, transfusing, her hands steady while Hollins shouted behind her, his words breaking against the noise. 30 seconds later, the room fell quiet except for breathing. Real breathing. Hollins stepped in front of her, face flushed, eyes dead. "Get out," he said. "Security will escort you." Emily straightened, blood on her arms, heart still racing. She didn't argue. She already knew the cost. The walk to administration felt longer than the longest night shift she had ever worked. 2 security guards followed a step behind, eyes down, hands clasped like men escorting a coffin. Emily could still smell antiseptic on her skin, feel the phantom resistance of ribs under her palm. Mark Hollins sat behind his desk, fingers flying across a keyboard, not looking up. "Insubordination," he said. "Practicing medicine without authorization. Endangering hospital assets." He finally raised his eyes. They were empty of anger now. This was paperwork to him. "You cost this hospital tens of thousands of dollars tonight." "I saved his life," Emily said. Her voice didn't shake. She stood straight, shoulders back, scrubs stained dark. Hollins laughed once, short and sharp. "You don't get paid to save lives. You get paid to follow policy." He slid a single page across the desk. "Termination for cause. Effective immediately. Sign it." Emily thought of the years, missed holidays, sleeping in her car between double shifts, holding the hand of a dying woman whose family never came. She signed. Hollins didn't thank her. He held out his hand. "Your badge." She unclipped it and placed it on the desk, the plastic making a dull sound that felt final. "You'll never work in this state again," he added. Outside, the night air hit her hard. She walked to the parking lot alone, cardboard box pressed to her chest. The hospital lights humming behind her like a place she no longer belonged to. Her car refused to start. The key turned. Click. Again. Click. Emily leaned forward until her forehead touched the steering wheel, breath fogging the glass. The box slid off the passenger seat and spilled. A framed photo, a worn stethoscope, a coffee mug with a crack down the side. She didn't cry. She counted breaths instead. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 12 years of night shift discipline keeping her upright while everything else collapsed. The hospital behind her glowed like a fortress she had been exiled from. All that light, and none of it meant for her anymore. Then the sound arrived. Low at first, a vibration you felt in the ribs before the ears caught up. The asphalt trembled. Wind tore across the lot, lifting dust and paper and something heavier. Emily looked up. 2 helicopters dropped out of the dark, black shapes against the moon, flying too low, too fast. No lights. Spotlights snapped on, white and brutal. The lot exploded into motion. Doors slammed, alarms screamed. Somewhere inside, people ran. The first aircraft hit the ground hard. The rotors did not slow. Men poured out in dark gear, moving with a precision that bent the air around them. One of them stopped when he saw her by the dead car. He turned, ripped off his mask. His eyes were wild. "Ma'am!" he shouted over the noise, sprinting toward her. "Are you Emily Carter?" She froze, hands raised without thinking. "We need you," he said. "Right now." "We lost him again," the soldier said, voice cracking just enough to betray the control. "Vitals are crashing. Our medic's down. You're the only one he asked for." Emily shook her head once, slow. "I don't work here anymore." The words sounded small even to her. The soldier stared at her like she'd spoken the wrong language. "Ma'am, with respect, none of that matters." He keyed his radio, turned his body just enough to shield her without thinking. "Asset is conscious," he said. "He keeps saying the nurse, the one who didn't listen to the suit." Emily's chest tightened. She looked past him at the hospital doors. Security clustered there now. Holland's silhouette sharp against the light. "Who is he?" Emily asked. The soldier didn't hesitate. "Daniel Walker, former Marine, runs Blackstone Ridge. He took 3 rounds pulling his team out of an ambush." The name meant nothing to her. The tone did. "They tried to move him," he went on. "Administrator ordered a transfer that would kill him. We intercepted it." Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her eyes dropped to her hands. Still steady, always steady. "I need a crash kit," she said. "And I need him kept away from me." The soldier's mouth twitched into something like a smile. "Ma'am," he said, stepping aside. "If he touches you, he won't have fingers left." Emily nodded once and started walking back toward the doors she had just been thrown out of. The rotors screaming overhead like the world was tearing open. The doors didn't slide open this time. They blew inward under a hard boot, glass bursting across the floor like ice under a hammer. Emily walked through it without slowing, flanked by armed men who moved like shadows with weight. The waiting room had gone silent. Patients pressed against walls, staff frozen mid-step. At the center stood Mark Hollins, flanked by security guards who suddenly looked very small. "She's fired!" he shouted, pointing at Emily with a shaking hand. "She is trespassing. Arrest her." No one moved. One guard glanced at the rifles, then at his radio, then took a step back. Hollins lunged forward instead, panic breaking through his authority. "You cannot bring weapons into a hospital." One of the soldiers stopped inches from him, voice flat. You are obstructing a medical extraction." Hollins laughed, shrill. "That man is an uninsured vagrant." The soldier's hand shot out, gripping Hollins's collar, lifting him off the floor like a misplaced object. "That man," he said quietly, "is our boss." Hollins's face drained of color as his feet dangled. He was dropped. Hard. Emily didn't look at him. She was already moving down the hall. Trauma 1 was chaos again. Blood, alarms, a young nurse crying while squeezing a bag valve mask. Dr. Brooks stood helpless at the bedside. Emily took one look at the monitor. "Step back," she said. Her voice cut through the noise. The room obeyed. They moved him fast, strapping lines, locking tubing, lifting with a speed that left no room for doubt. The hallway watched them pass, a silent corridor of faces that didn't know whether to be afraid or relieved. Outside, the rotors screamed louder, the night torn into pieces by wind and dust. Emily climbed into the helicopter without ceremony, knees brushing steel, hands already checking the monitor clipped to the stretcher. The bird lifted hard, banking away from the city lights, Riverside shrinking into a box of pale glow below them. The world turned violent. The pitch changed. The aircraft dove, then climbed, then leveled just long enough for the alarms to start. Heart rate spiked. Oxygen dropped. Emily's eyes snapped to the chest tube. Fresh red flooded the line. "He's bleeding again," she shouted, bracing her forearm as the floor tilted. "I need a steady flight." The pilot's voice came back tight. "We've got a drone on us." Another hard bank threw her against the frame. The monitor shrieked. "Choose," Emily said, not yelling. "Certain." The cabin went still for a breath. Then a voice. "Level out," the soldier said. The helicopter steadied, hanging exposed in the sky. Emily didn't look up. She packed the wound, pressed until her arms burned, whispering through clenched teeth. "Stay with me." The bleeding slowed. The line cleared. A rhythm returned. Outside, flares burst white. The night shook. Inside, Emily held him together, unblinking. The helicopter dropped into a canyon of concrete and stone, lights snapping on as a fortified compound rose to meet them. Steel doors swallowed the aircraft and sealed shut, cutting the roar down to a low, vibrating hum. Emily jumped out before the skids fully settled, boots hitting concrete, eyes already scanning. They moved Daniel Walker onto a rolling table and pushed fast through corridors that looked more like a submarine than a hospital. No windows, no signage. Just doors that opened before anyone touched them. Inside the operating suite, the air felt heavy, controlled. Daniel's chest rose shallow under the drape, skin pale, lashes dark against his cheeks. Emily scrubbed in while a massive screen flickered to life. A man's face appeared, older, calm, eyes sharp behind thin glasses. "I'm Dr. Henry Wu," he said. "I'm in London. You're my hands." Emily swallowed once. "I'm a trauma nurse," she replied. "Not a surgeon." Wu didn't blink. "Tonight, that distinction doesn't matter." The incision opened. Blood followed. Wu's voice stayed steady as the pressure climbed. Clamp, suction, deeper. Emily worked by feel when vision disappeared. fingers finding the vessel through heat and resistance. Minutes stretched thin. Her back burned. Her hands never shook. When Wu finally said, "The lung is sealed," Emily exhaled like she'd been underwater too long. The monitor steadied. Daniel lived, the door sealed behind her. Silence rushed in. Then the lights went out. The darkness was absolute, the kind that swallowed sound. Backup monitors flickered on in dull green, casting Daniel's face in ghost light. Emily stood still, counting seconds, listening past her own breathing. A soft scrape came from the ceiling vent. Metal on metal. Slow, intentional. Her hand closed around the weight that had been pressed into her palm earlier. The grip unfamiliar, wrong, heavy with consequence. A shape dropped silently to the floor. The pilot. His night vision lenses glowed faintly as he swept the room, muzzle tracking toward the bed. "You did good work," he said, voice calm, almost kind. "Step away, and you walk out alive." Emily didn't move. She felt the steadiness rise, the same cold focus that had carried her through bleeding hallways and shaking skies. "You're shaking," he added. "You won't shoot." She stepped into the light. The first shot shattered glass. The second forced him back. He fired wild, rounds chewing metal as Emily moved, low and fast, heart pounding but aim true. Pain tore through his leg, and he went down hard, screaming. The door detonated inward. Armed men flooded the room. The soldier who had found her kicked the gun away and pinned the traitor to the floor. Emily lowered the weapon. Her hands finally shook. Daniel breathed on, unaware, alive. In the sudden quiet, she understood something clearly. This was no longer just a job. This was a line she had crossed, and the world on the other side would never let her go. 3 weeks later, Riverside General looked the same from the street, and nothing like it on the inside. The air carried a different tension now, sharp and electric, whispers moving faster than stretchers. Nurses clustered in corners, speaking in half sentences. Administrators avoided eye contact. Word had spread that the hospital's debt had been bought overnight, quietly, without press or warning. No one knew by whom. Mark Hollins walked through the lobby with a knot in his stomach, suit pressed, smile rehearsed. He told himself this was good news. New owners meant new budgets, new leverage. He had numbers. He always had numbers. The boardroom doors closed behind him with a soft click that sounded too final. He froze. At the head of the table sat Daniel Walker, thinner now, pale, seated in a wheelchair, grey eyes sharp and awake. Standing to his right was Emily Carter, hair pulled back, posture calm, wearing a navy suit instead of scrubs. Holland's tablet slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. "You fired her," Daniel said quietly. No anger. Worse. Certainty. For saving my life. Emily didn't look at Hollins. She placed a folder on the table. Wrongful deaths. Denied admissions. Cost-cutting memos with signatures at the bottom. His signature. "This hospital will change," Daniel continued. "Effective immediately." Security opened the door. not hospital security. Hollins's voice broke as he was escorted out, the sound swallowed by the silence of people who finally understood, who had been standing in front of them all along. Emily stood alone by the boardroom window after the doors closed, watching ambulances roll in below like a steady pulse returning to a living body. The parking lot looked smaller from up here, less final. Daniel turned his wheelchair slightly, wincing, then smiled at her with something like relief. "They built this place to count money," he said. "You're going to teach it how to count people." Emily didn't answer right away. She thought of night shifts that never ended, of patients turned away, of voices that had gone quiet in hallways like this one. "It won't be quick," she said, "and it won't be cheap." Daniel nodded. "Good. If it were easy, it wouldn't matter." The changes began before noon. Orders reversed. Staff reinstated. Supply rooms unlocked. New equipment rolled in, still wrapped in plastic. Dr. Brooks stopped her in the hall, eyes wet, disbelief written across his face. "They gave us everything," he said. Emily met his gaze. "They gave it back," she corrected. "It was always supposed to be here." Word spread for. Nurses walked straighter. Doctors listened when she spoke. No one raised their voice. Later, when the building finally settled, Emily returned to the parking lot. Her car was gone. In its place sat a simple sedan, keys waiting at the desk upstairs. She didn't smile. She watched an elderly man step out of an ambulance and get help without anyone asking for a card. For the first time in years, the night felt quiet in the right way. Emily walked the halls after midnight, when the noise had finally drained away and the building revealed what it really was. A place where people came broken, a place that could either heal or discard them. She stopped outside Trauma 1, the same room where everything had turned, and rested her hand against the cool glass. She could still hear the monitor screaming in her memory, still feel the weight of a life under her palms. That part would never leave her. She didn't want it to. Daniel watched from the end of the hall, quiet, thoughtful. He understood now why she had stood her ground when every system told her not to. She hadn't been reckless. She had been anchored. In a world obsessed with policy, profit, and permission, she had chosen responsibility. Not to a boss, not to a board, to the person bleeding in front of her. By morning, Riverside General was no longer just a hospital. It was a line drawn in the sand. People would cross it, knowing they would be treated as human beings first. Emily turned off the lights and walked toward the exit, not as a survivor, not as a martyr, but as someone who had reclaimed her place by refusing to surrender it. If this story of courage, consequence, and quiet power meant something to you, show your support with a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments below.